Yeah, this presentation I half created and then I pulled from other presentations. So it's a real mishmash of um, what am I thinking of? The design, like the format.
That's how most of ours are. So no
Yeah,
worries.
yeah, it's more interesting that way. It keeps you engaged.
Yeah, plus then we get material from all over the place and
Yeah.
but yeah, I think we could maybe get going and if anyone joins in late, they can just ask the easy toss-up questions at the end.
What did I miss?
Mhm.
Okay. So can you see your video down in the corner, or you just see me?
No, so we see you, the screen, and then kind of a gallery on the top of whoever's in the meeting.
Oh, okay. I don't even see the gallery, but that's okay. I um I guess yeah, I can get started. Um, should I start, or do you do a like call to order?
No, we don't have like a formal a gavel or anything. I guess
Yeah.
Noelle, our secretary, should be in charge of that really. So, but I guess we could start off by saying thank you, first of all, for being here. And myself and some of the other geothermal rising officers that are on the meeting right now are really grateful to our speakers and panelists that we've been able to have this year. So we started our chapter in the fall, and we've been kind of working to expand it and reach some of the students outside of our little geothermal department here. And so it's really a great opportunity to have you here and speak. And from there, I'll let you kind of take over and get started.
Okay. Well, great. Um, my name is Amelia Letvin. I am the senior geoscientist for Baseload Power US, and I'm here to tell you about um, my experience getting into geothermal and life after geothermal. And this this starting slide is an image that I found on Instagram by a cartoonist I follow. And I thought it was just so perfectly apropos because in the bottom left, you start out kind of following a plan and then everything can happen. And that's what makes it the wonderful world of geothermal. So getting into this, can I move the name? There we go. So I wanted to say that I'm a big fan of Geothermal Rising and also the student committee, and I'm happy to support your endeavors. And on other projects, I'm working with Caesar and University of Oklahoma and Munes in North Dakota, and I think it's a really great a network that you guys have built, and keep it going. I'll get into that later. All right, so this is me. I just got a professional headshot and a little bit about my personal experience and my perspective, because we each come from the perspective that we grow up with. And I have over 10 years of experience working in geology, sorry, in geothermal geology, an additional 5 years on top of that working in environmental geology. And I am a champion of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm also part of the Wing Global Operations team, which is currently based in the US and will be moving next year. We have 3 country chapters that have put in an application to carry that forward. And it's a responsibility that rotates every 3 years. I am a big advocate for climate change. And getting more into my personal perspectives, I was born and raised in the United States. I have lived abroad and traveled abroad, and that has added to my perspective. And I'm also female, identify as she, her, Caucasian, and I like to consider myself a realist. And as I said at the beginning, I work for Baseload Power, which is an offshoot of Baseload Capital. So I know that there was Dario and some others from Varm Orca who may have presented to you a few weeks ago, and they are affiliated with Baseload Capital as well. It's separate from the Baseload Power Iceland, but how I think about it is, and I said this to Matthew just a second ago, but Baseload Capital is like the trunk of a tree that supports these branches of these individual country teams or organizations rather. So the baseload power companies, there's the US, Japan, Taiwan, and Iceland. And the individual country offices are set up to work within the local markets and understanding that every country has very different laws and requirements and water rights, environmental rights. And in in addition to that, there's all the geologists are working together to help support our understanding of geothermal resources because that can transcend government boundaries. So I kind of covered this a little bit already, but to focus more specifically on Baseload Power US, because that is where I work and what I'm most familiar with. We currently have 2 projects that are in the development stage and several others which are in the pipeline phase. And the pipeline is more of what I focus on as a geologist, getting projects up to the putting megawatts online stage. And also right now in the US, there are a lot of incentives from both the federal and state level that are working to get more renewable energy online. And in my opinion, and I've heard this from many other people, it's a really exciting time to be getting into geothermal. So I think you guys are really coming in, like riding a good wave. So I'll get into my personal history a bit. This photo is from a trip to Honduras when I was working for Engineers Without Borders. I studied at, excuse me, at Wayne State University in Detroit, Michigan. And after that, worked in the environmental field for 5 years, as I alluded to earlier. Most of the environmental work that I did was cleaning up oil and gas in soil and groundwater. So I was working for, excuse me, I was working for dirty power and energy companies and helping to clean them up to be have less of an impact on the environment. And in 2009, there was well, it's become called in modern times like the Great Recession, but it was an economic downturn. And the company I was working for did massive layoffs. And I took this as an opportunity to pivot and redefine my trajectory. And I thought about the work that I was doing to improve the environment for dirty power and energy companies. And I thought I'd rather be part of a solution to clean energy than cleaning up after the dirty energy. And with a geology background, it was, when I did some soul searching, it was clear that geothermal power was my answer of that direction. And I looked into programs in both Iceland and New Zealand and was accepted into the Renewable Energy School in Akureyri, Iceland. And that's how I ended up there. At this time, there are more geothermal programs popping up in the US and in other countries. So there's definitely a lot more options available. But Iceland and New Zealand are still probably at the top of the game. So, so the Renewable Energy School, unfortunately, went out of business. It did not survive. However, the experience and the knowledge and the opportunity to live in Iceland for a year, to live on with renewable energy and geothermal water coming out of the spout, and getting to know the different ideas and cultures of my many classmates was a truly incredible experience. So here are just some fun pictures of hot springs and birthday parties, and I wanted to highlight that the experience of studying abroad and with such a diverse group of classmates was really one of the best years of my life, because it can really change your perspective when you're engrossed in another culture, which I've been lucky enough to do on job sites as well. So I guess within this presentation, there might be, or within this audience, there might be people who are not at the University of Reykjavik, and also at University of Reykjavik, they might not be international, they might be Icelanders. So this is a promotion of getting out of your comfort zone. I forgot about all this animation. So I've been reading the Marie Kondo book about what brings you joy, and I thought that this was a good turn of phrase, that when you consider your future career path, what brings you joy? And there are a lot of things to consider in that regard. In the geothermal industry, there's primarily 3 different ways that you can work within the industry, or within geothermal. And one of them is industry. The other are government and academics. And I'll talk a little bit about each of these. So industry are probably names that you're familiar with, plant operators, subcontractors, drilling companies. And in addition to that, there's some really cool startups that have started. Sorry, something just popped up. If you're familiar with, there's Fervo and Zanskar, two startup companies that have come out of, I live in the Bay Area, and they came out of a collaboration between industry, government, and academics. It's based here in Berkeley, and it has support networks and funding and government advisors. And if you're feeling entrepreneurial, that they're really interested in supporting companies that are looking for lowering the carbon footprint of humankind and having a more energy neutral future. You may already be familiar with academics. Continuing your research or teaching are both possibilities. And then there's the government, which it's an interesting position because it changes every 4 years with the administration, but it can be a really exciting way of getting into a part of the country that you wouldn't normally get into. So the national labs do a lot of work on research facilities and the DoD, Department of Defense. And then the DOE, you know, they're the ones who are giving out new grants this year because as part of the, oh, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but the thing that Biden just passed that went through.
IIJA.
IIJ. Thank you. And they are all connected. Yeah, that's another really important part is don't have a strong resentment against one or the other because you'll likely be working with a team that's built up of many of them. So I chose the direction of industry. When I graduated, there, similar to now, there was a lot of government in the U.S. Investment money that was part of the Obama not reclamation. The Obama had put a lot of money into renewable energy that went to not just geothermal, but wind and solar. I think that was it. And a lot of it was cost sharing, so covering 50% of something. And it pushed a lot of projects forward. And unfortunately, there wasn't a tailwind to carry the projects beyond what the initial investment created. So there was a surge of American-based exploration, and then it really plateaued. And for me, in my career, that steered me in the direction of going international. So I started working on projects in countries that were getting government support. So projects in East Africa that were getting funding from US aid, World Bank, and other European financial institutions, and then self-funded projects. So a company that's able to push forward a project without having a government support financially. Okay, this one has a lot of words, but I wanted to talk about the different geothermal fields that you can find worldwide. Kind of a compare and contrast of, you know, you're studying in Iceland, which is where there's a hot spot as well as divergent plate boundaries. And in other parts of the world, you have hot spots such as Hawaii and the Azores. And then you also have divergent plates in East Africa. But they're different in different ways. The chemistry of the reservoir is different, but the stress mechanics are similar. And my thought with discussing this is that there's information and knowledge that you can retain when you're working in a place. Like if you're become very proficient in the Great Basin in the US, which is mostly Nevada, parts of western Utah and southern Idaho, it's very similar stress field that and rock mechanics as there are to the Menderes Basin in Turkey. And also a new developing field is in eastern China. And you have subduction zones on the west coast of the US and the east coast, you know, the whole Ring of Fire, but they're different. You don't get the volcanic eruptions in, you know, Oregon and British Columbia that you get in the Philippines and New Zealand because of the different faults and what the rocks are that are subducting and colliding with each other. And then the last bullet point there, sedimentary basins, which is one of the new kind of developing fields of geothermal, which is really exciting. And it brings areas that hadn't previously been considered or still aren't considered the conventional geothermal fields, but now they are showing possibility, and especially with the utilization of existing wells. So areas with a lot of oil and gas drilling can reuse those wells or have cogeneration if the wells are still producing, but you have enough heat to extract, and you can use that waste heat. Oh, and here's a collage of photos. Let's see, we have Djibouti, Kenya, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Honduras, Indonesia. So many different atmospheres. You know, this is a jungle, this is a desert, this is a high elevation plain, this is the Sumatran jungle. It can take you to great places and meet great people. So, as I alluded to earlier, the Icelanders are very known for having geothermal education. One of my favorite stories about like how small the geothermal world is. I was working on a project in Djibouti with Kenyan rig hands, and we were talking about Iceland and Reno, Nevada, because we've all been to those places. So there's little spots that tend to pull everybody in, and yeah, it's nice to have that shared educational experience. And reservoirs are like a snowflake. So yeah, the in situ stress fields, the reservoir rocks, the brine chemistry, and the fracture networks, they are individual to a field. You need to take them on and appreciate them, and then from that you can learn lessons. You know, like rock mechanics are not going to be that extraordinarily different from one field to another, but don't take it for granted when you understand one field that will be replicatable across, you know, many different fields. You can draw assumptions, say like, oh, the Great Basin doesn't have very caustic reservoir brine, and in Japan it's pretty common to have very nasty reservoir brines, but that's a good generalization, not a specific. So I became a independent contractor after working for a geothermal producer operator, which was Ormat, and then working for a consulting company, Geothermex. And I felt comfortable at that stage in my life to become an independent contractor because I was familiar with the needs of the geothermal of exploration and what would be of use, and I knew people that, you know, would be looking for subcontractors to pull in, and I felt like I had built a pretty good network and built a reputation. But I want to say that that's not necessary. That you know, you can think of people like Facebook founder. You know, he started a company straight out of without even finishing school. If you have a good idea and you can sell it don't hesitate to become your own boss. Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, I think that it's becoming more and more common and more widely accepted to promote yourself. And sorry. Yeah, if you have a good idea that you think can really change things, don't wait until you've, built up clientele. You can do that once you're going. And I saw that you guys had I can't think of the name, Flux, Anna Jetinesh on here, a prime example, starting her own company before finishing degree, just take the ball when it's passed to you and seize the opportunity. And my journey also took me to Antarctica. I joined a leadership training organization called Homeward Bound, and it was a program meant to teach leadership skills to women who work in STEM. And it culminates, it's a year-long program, and it's worldwide, so it's connecting with women from many different countries. There was a strong Australian presence. And then after the year of study, we were on a ship together for 3 weeks that went from Argentina down to Antarctica. And the overarching similarity with all of the women was a passion for fighting climate change, for, realizing that we need to make a difference and not really knowing how, and helping to learn ways to promote yourself, to be genuine, and to get support from the network that we created. So after completing Homeward Bound, it kind of started me on a path of working on enhancing my visibility and building support networks and finding other people who shared my passions, because a lot of the time when I'm working on remote projects, I'm oftentimes the only woman there, and I wanted to make a situation where other women would feel welcome and perhaps not turned off because of the solitude. So this photo was part of a Women in Geothermal promotion of taking quotes from women and putting it out there. And yeah, to be a confident and competent voice, you have to think like a team, not think like a man. Nothing against thinking like a man, but it's the broader atmosphere. So things that I learned from this path of self-discovery is a big thing is know yourself, know your weaknesses, know what you are capable of and what you aren't capable of, and don't hide them, because when other people realize that they're not alone in what they aren't capable of, you can help to empower other people and say, like, I thought I was the only one who was really held up on this front. And also champion each other. So there's this, I'm really hoping it's like an antiquated view that, with women in leadership positions, that there's a competition between them. Like if there's one woman on the board of an organization, there can only be one. So if another woman comes up, then there's a there could be a conflict. And I feel like this is becoming an outdated perspective, that there's a greater sense of helping each other. And if you're the one woman at the table, you can help make space for other women. And in addition to that, if you're not a woman at the table, you can still make space for other women. So some organizations that I am part of: GWNet, which is the Global Women's Network for the Energy Transition. It's a European-based organization for setting up mentorships within the renewable energy sector. And I was really lucky and blessed. I was partnered up with Marit Brommer, the director of IGA, and yeah, it's a mentorship is a great way to just have somebody that can show you the route, show you that anything is possible, and help you with all your questions. And if you have the opportunity to mentor somebody, then I would highly recommend it. DEI, I spoke about that. GR, Geothermal Rising. Last year, 2021, GR started the DEI task force, and we really hit the ball rolling. I was part of the inaugural team to get that going. We collected data about the demographics of Geothermal Rising's membership to identify what the baseline statistics were, like what percentage was male, female, Caucasian, person of color, person of Native or Asian descent, people who are non-binary in gender, people who have different sexual preferences, which I think some people found that one uncomfortable to talk about, but it's a marginalized group that needs support and needs to be welcomed and not feel ostracized. And I gave a presentation at the plenary during the Geothermal Rising conference last year in San Diego, which was really well received. I was very nervous, and afterwards, many people came up to me, even people who weren't there but just watched it online, to say, I saw the talk and I thought it was incredible. And I'm so glad that Geothermal Rising is putting this, front and center during the plenary at their conference to emphasize, like, this is something that we want to champion and push forward and prioritize. And WING, Women in Geothermal, which I know I have a couple slides on, so I will probably talk about that next. Dun, So this is actually from GR Expo Hall last year. Me and Munes were at the booth. And this list off to the side is, if you were to just look at that and say, I know a way to increase employee motivation and morale and increase business performance and improve the reputation of a company and bring in a higher number of customers and innovation and financial support performance, it would be a no-brainer. You would say, oh, great, I want to do whatever it is that would make all these positive changes. And it's a proven fact that diverse teams have all these increased benefits. When you have people from different backgrounds, different cultures, it brings out the best in everybody and it improves the output. So, it's not just a good idea, it's good. It's a good for business idea. And these are excerpted from a wing presentation. And it's kind of funny. I see that the wing logo got a little squashed. So I guess it's a different shaped slide. But a good way to get involved and stay involved, if these are things that you feel passionate about, or if they're things that you are interested in and perhaps don't know enough about to be passionate about, there's a lot of ways that you could work on advancing the goals of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm going to highlight the first 2 points here, that right now we have a 2 initiatives going on with Wing. If you are going to be in the US at the end of August, Wing is sponsoring 10 students. The sponsorship is only for registration to the event, so travel and lodging are not included, but yeah, hopefully some of you can attend. And then also we're having a core value. We're accepting nominations for the core values right now. The core values are open, caring, courageous, and empowering. And if you know somebody in the geothermal industry, a colleague, a classmate, a professor, somebody who is inspiring and, really brings out the best in geothermal, nominate them for an award, because it's a really beautiful award, and we like to really give it to some of the unsung heroes in the industry. So then going down the list here, in everyday life, you can use your voice to encourage people to participate, to push for leadership, and make representation a priority on your clubs, your organizations, and even in politics. And yeah, one final push for Wing: become a member. It's easy, it's free. Go to our website and sign up, and follow us on social media. And these points were on the other slide with Munes. And this is an excerpt from the plenary. These are graphs that were created by Karen Christofferson et al., which is Kelly and Bridget, in a paper that was presented at the WGC last year, at one of the early in the year events. And what they did is they went back through 40 years of geothermal reports to find the trend for female participation in. These 2 slides just show authoring papers and membership on the board, but they also studied membership to organizations, presenting of papers at the events. And to do a slight generalization, I could say that things were relatively stagnant through the 80s and 90s. And in the last 20 years, there's been a great improvement. We're pushing onward and upward, up and to the right, as they say. And to draw one point is that the y-axis is not the same for both of these graphs. So the board membership y-axis, we're over 50% for IGA and up to 50% for the GRC. But the female authored papers, we haven't reached 25% yet. So encourage women to author papers. We want to hear from the other 50%. Okay, so what excites me about geothermal? I'll stay on that slide. Right now, there's a lot of developing technology that I'm pretty excited for that will help lower costs and bring interest from people who previously weren't that interested in geothermal. One of my favorite developing technologies is lithium extraction from geothermal brine. I think that could really change the popularity of geothermal in the US. And it's not going to be applicable to all geothermal fields. I think the Salton Sea area is really unique in their lithium content, but it'll help to bring geothermal into the conversation. And another developing technology that can be applied, all over the world is closed loop technology, either closed loop like the Ever loop or closed loop like the Green Fire in one well. So if you have a well that's got temperature but no permeability, you could do a closed loop cycle within one well. And yeah, there's many other developing technologies and startups that are exciting, and yeah, good time to get into geothermal. So here are my parting thoughts. This was graduation from Res, my alma mater, which is no more, but the network still exists. Things can outlive their own existence. So the network of the Renewable Energy School, I still keep in touch with my advisors and lab mates, and continue to build your network. Like reach out. I don't have to say everybody needs to join women in STEM leadership to Antarctica group, but find groups that appeal to you, to your different senses, and not only geothermal, but other realms. If you're enthusiastic about educating the youth or climate change or I don't know, reducing vehicular use. There are a lot of things, and finding people that share that passion with you can help you. And my final bit of advice, this is a picture from Reykjavik from last year, is that you don't need to have everything sorted out. This is a work in progress. It's continuously progressing, and looking at my path, I wouldn't have predicted that I would be here, and I don't know where I'll be 20 years from now. And when thinking about what you want to do and what direction you want to push towards, instead of having a concrete goal, I like to think about something that you want to accomplish, because there can be many ways to accomplish a goal. And then also determine something that you like to do and how you can incorporate what you like to do into a goal you want to accomplish. And then lastly, but certainly not least, is that you can always change. If you're committed to something, don't think that you're married to it. You can change directions numerous times in your career. So there we are, back to the plan and what actually happens. And I want to wish you all good luck and stay in touch. And you're entering the career phase of your geothermal life, and I'd love to help and create your own path. So thank you very much. I am happy to take any and all questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Amelia. That was amazing. Maybe we could do a virtual round of applause, or real if you want to turn on your.
I don't know if you guys saw the what was it? The Oscars the award went to a movie that was made with deaf people in it, and this is how they applause.
That should be the new Zoom thing. That's just better.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I can try to stop sharing. Okay.
Yes, I think Noelle actually has a few people huddled around her little screen there. But if there's no questions from anyone right now, I could start us off maybe. Um, were there any particular like skills or um, assets or any particular knowledge that you gained from your time in Iceland and what you learned here from geothermal that I guess maybe in your experience in the industry or at certain companies were really useful or that maybe a potential hiring coordinator looked for or was really impressed by and that sort of thing?
Hmm. Well, while I was in Iceland, I visited many geothermal power plants and hotspots, you know, soaked in as many as I could, and also visited an active drilling. And it was the hands-on experiences that were impressive. Um, but that was also how I conveyed them in an interview. So I think whatever you feel the most passionate about and can, you know, voice, this is what excited me and this is what was making the greatest impression, I think that will be the biggest thing to carry forward. You know, because for some people, visiting a power plant probably wasn't as stimulating, but you know, depending on what really, to go back to Marie Kondo, sparks joy for you. I would also say that probably not a skill that I learned specifically from Iceland, but a skill that has helped me is resilience. That the the geothermal industry is not always stable, and um, as I described, there were times where I had to go abroad to work on geothermal projects. And and even within, you know, my independent contracting time, there were waxes and wanes of projects coming down the pipeline. So be resilient and be flexible if you're committed to it.
I have another question. I don't know how to put it, but how did you start selling your idea when you started your independent contracting? And also, like, which was your strategy when telling people, like, hey, this is like my idea and this is why you should invest in me?
Well, so I had worked on a rig site before for both geothermex and ORMAT. So I had the experience of knowing what in my excuse me, in my particular experience, I was a well site geologist. So I knew what I was able to provide, which was well site geology services. And I kept an eye on the news, like Think Geoenergy and LinkedIn, and other geothermal specific news outlets to know when there were projects that were starting, and you know, just cold call, reach out to people and say, I see that you just won a contract and you're going to be starting drilling soon and you're going to need a well site geologist, and here's my resume. So um, it's it's a small enough geothermal community that usually somebody, even if they don't know you, they'll say, like, look you up on LinkedIn and say, oh, well, I see that she knows so and so or has done this or that. And it's not like, you know, a shot in the dark. And then once you start doing that, people can share your name around as well. And also attending conferences now that they're going to be in person again is a really great opportunity to figure out who's working on what projects and what service you could provide, and yeah, share your come armed with business cards and share them around. Did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Maybe one more for me then. Are there any, I guess, maybe specific sectors or kind of, you know, the subsectors of geothermal that baseload power is looking at in the US, or that you're, I guess, maybe particularly excited about? Like, obviously there's a lot of people and companies now looking into the sedimentary basins. So are you guys still kind of looking to kind of stay in the traditional realm or move into some of these newer sectors?
So baseload, a little further background. Baseload Capital was a spinoff of Climon. And Climon was they developed modular waste heat recovery units that were used by many baseload facilities, not many, several, in Japan. And they're great because it's kind of like plug and play. You can take the whole thing and it's like a small transportable power plant. And it works for low to medium temperature heat sources. So I find low to medium temperature to be a really exciting new area of development. It wasn't last year, but I think the year before that, the country that had the most geothermal wells drilled was the Netherlands, which is entirely sedimentary basin. Like they're only going for that low to medium heat, and they're using it for district heating and direct use. So I think direct use is also a really exciting developing field of geothermal, to have more greenhouses and aquaculture and like just an independence of not having to rely on food and produce shipped from across the world. I've heard about communities in northern Canada that, you know, the prospect of growing their own produce can bring vegetables down to a third of the cost that they are right now. And I mean, like, Iceland is incredible with their Iceland grown bananas. Who would have ever thought? And they don't import any tomatoes and cucumbers. Like, it's it's got a lot of potential. So I think that fully utilizing all of the lower temperature resources is the most exciting part going forward.
Definitely. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions before we wrap it up and let Amelia get on with her busy day?
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. I wish you all the best of luck. I think you're probably close to the end of your semester, so keep in there. Almost done.
Yeah, we appreciate it. But at least the sun's coming back out here in Iceland, so.
Nice. Then all
It's
the
always
lupus
something to look
are
forward to.
big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, thank you, Amelia. And thanks
Thank
everyone
you.
for tuning in.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.